UN Security Council veto power needs reform to be more inclusive. Russia vows response if Ukraine uses US long-range missiles. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. This is World Today. I'm Otto Othman. The veto power held by the permanent 5 countries in the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, should be more inclusive. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim said the current setting is grossly unfair, adding that reforms of the United Nations have been in discussion for over 5 decades.
The call for reform of the United Nations must include the principle of representation. Now, so we are suggesting, while there is no necessity for a major structural change, they should consider adequate democratic representation from regions. Latin America and Africa have been left behind. It's grossly unfair to continue United Nations Security Council and the veto power by excluding them.
The Premier said this at the second session of the Reform of the Institutions of Global Governance at the G20 Summit in Brazil. He stressed that the current system is not adequate to address the rapidly changing global challenges. The 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, also known as the Big Five or P5, are China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. In another development, Malaysia joins the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, an initiative by Brazil's G20 presidency to accelerate progress towards eradicating hunger and poverty while advancing sustainable development goals. Datuk Sri Anwar said by joining this Global Alliance, Malaysia reaffirms its commitment to achieving the 2030 agenda in combating hunger and poverty, ensuring that no one is left behind.
The Global Alliance calls for strong political commitment and collaborative action to end these misguided policies if we are serious about effectively eliminating hunger and poverty towards a shared future. At the same time, we need to rid ourselves of the legacy inherited from the Bretton Woods institutions, including the prevalence of unfair trading practices and to genocide.
Speaking in the first session of the fight against hunger and poverty at the G20 summit, the Prime Minister said the Malaysian government has made significant strides through the Madani economy framework to improve the well-being of the people. He further noted that as chair of ASEAN next year, Malaysia stands ready to collaborate on capacity-building efforts, focusing on enhancing resilience, alleviating poverty, and improving governance across the region. On the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Datuk Sri Anwar held a meeting with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. Now, during the meeting, both leaders expressed their commitment to continue to strengthen relations and cooperation between the two countries. The bilateral meeting with the French president at the Museum of Modern Art, according to Datuk Sri Anwar, the meeting covered the fields of trade, investment, tourism and defence, as well as cooperation in the field of artificial intelligence. Datuk Sri Anwar and Macron also discussed Malaysia's role as ASEAN chair next year, and the Prime Minister expressed his appreciation to Macron for his support through the ASEAN-France development cooperation. In addition, the two leaders also had time to discuss the genocide that is occurring in Palestine, which requires a ceasefire as soon as possible and the cooperation of all parties to end the suffering of the people there. Also present during the meeting was Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz. Members of the United Nations Security Council have called for a surge in assistance to reach the people in need in Gaza, warning that the situation in the Palestinian enclave was getting worse. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy said there needs to be a massive rise in aid to Gaza. where most of the population of the 2.3 million people have been displaced, and the enclave's health officials say more than 43,922 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's offensive.
The situation is devastating and frankly beyond comprehension, and it's getting worse, not better. Winter's here. Famine is imminent. And 400 days into this war, it is totally unacceptable that it's harder than ever to get aid into Gaza.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, told the Security Council that Washington is closely watching Israel's actions to improve the situation for Palestinians and engaging with the Israeli government every day. Tor Wennesland, the UN coordinator for the West Asia peace process, said humanitarian agencies also face a challenging and dangerous operational environment in Gaza and access restrictions that hinder their work. Meanwhile, the European Union also described the war that has left Gaza in ruins as apocalyptical, calling it a war against the children.
Apocalyptical situation in Gaza, where 70% of the death toll is being paid by children and women. 70% of the casualties are children or women. In Lebanon, 100,000 houses destroyed. In Gaza, 2 million people from one side to the other of the strip. The most frequent age of the casualties in Gaza is 5 years old. The most frequent age of the casualties in Gaza is 5 years old. This is a war against the children.
The UN Human Rights Office last week also condemned what it called a systematic violation of the fundamental principles of international humanitarian law in Gaza. In a related development, the head of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, Filipe Lazzarini, said there was no alternative to the UN agency supporting Palestinian refugees following Israel's order to ban the organization that coordinates nearly all aid in war-ravaged Gaza.
Est-ce qu'il y a aujourd'hui une autre organisation en dehors d'un État qui fonctionne pour ramener des enfants dans un environnement éducatif? La réponse est non. Il n'y a personne. La même réponse vous sera donnée pour la santé primaire.
Lazzarini called on the UN, which created UNRA in 1949, to prevent the implementation of a ban on the organization, which was approved by the Israeli parliament last month. The ban, which is due to take effect on 28 January, sparked global condemnation, including from key Israeli backer, the United States. Lazzarini said Israel's main objective in its attacks on the agency is to strip Palestinians of their refugee status, undermining efforts for a two-state solution. UNRWA provides assistance to nearly 6 million Palestinian refugees across Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. The Kremlin has accused U.S. President Joe Biden for escalating the 1,000-day-old war in Ukraine, promising a palpable response to any use of U.S. long-range missiles by Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia. Kyiv has long sought authorization to use Army tactical missile systems against military targets inside Russia as its troops face some of the most intense pressure since Russia launched its offensive in February 2022. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga said the U.S. decision to allow the use of its long-range missiles could be a game-changer and have a very positive impact on the situation on the battlefield. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said it is obvious that the outgoing administration in Washington intends to continue fueling the fire and provoke a further escalation of tensions. He noted that President Vladimir Putin had clearly expressed Moscow's position in September when he declared that using the missiles would put NATO at war with Russia. Vowing an appropriate and palpable response, the Russian Foreign Ministry said Kyiv's use of long-range missiles to attack Russian territory would represent the direct involvement of the United States and its satellites in hostilities against Russia. Meanwhile, Germany has decided to deliver 4,000 AI-guided drones to Ukraine as Chancellor Olaf Scholz stood by a decision not to send Kyiv long-range Taurus missiles. Scholz has faced renewed pressure to hand the weapons system over to Ukraine after U.S. President Joe Biden gave Kyiv the green light to use U.S. missiles against military targets in Russia itself. Kyiv has repeatedly urged Germany to send it Taurus missiles, which have a reach of more than 500 kilometers, a plea Berlin has steadfastly refused. Scholz said it was important to support Ukraine's defense against Russia's full-scale invasion while acting prudently. He explained that the missiles could only be used if responsibility for targeting was shared, a move he had previously stressed would risk drawing Germany directly into the war. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said the drones being provided could take out the enemy's electronic drone defenses. He said the drones can be delivered very quickly and could be deployed 30 to 40 kilometers behind the front line and hit combat posts and logistic hubs, among other targets. Berlin has been the second biggest supplier of military aid to Ukraine in its fight against Russia's invasion. Thailand's gross domestic product GDP expanded by 3% in the third quarter of this year, up from 2.2% in the previous quarter. The National Economic and Social Development Council said on a seasonally adjusted basis, the GDP grew by 1.2% compared to the second quarter. The council reported that in the first 9 months of this year, the Thai economy grew by 2.3%. The agency highlighted key contributors to growth, particularly public investment, which expanded for the first time in 6 quarters. Additionally, it said the export of goods and services and government consumption expenditure showed favorable growth. However, private consumption slowed and private investment contracted during the period. The council revised its full-year GDP growth forecast to 2.6%, up from its earlier projection of 1.9%. It said headline inflation is estimated at 0.5%, and the current account is expected to record a surplus of 2.5% of GDP. Looking ahead to 2025, the council projected GDP growth in the range of 2.3% to 3.3%, with a midpoint estimate of 2.8%. The Philippines has intensified its call for increased climate finance to support vulnerable nations after being struck by a series of typhoons in recent months. During COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, Philippine Finance Undersecretary Maria Luwalhati Dorotan Tiaseko spearheaded the delegation's efforts in negotiating a post-2025 global finance commitment. This new collective quantified goal aims to address the shifting demands for climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. Tiaseko said everyone has been given an unmissable opportunity to shore up the global climate finance war chest, which for many vulnerable countries is a matter of life and death. She also said the Philippines is aggressively pushing for bold actions and sustained increased financing once and for all for countries that are perpetually on the front lines of catastrophic typhoons. On a related note, storm-weary Filipinos have started clearing fallen trees and repairing damaged houses after Super Typhoon Manyi, the 6th major storm to hit the Philippines in less than a month, battered the country and left at least 8 people dead. Manyi significantly weakened into a severe tropical storm before making its way out about noon yesterday. According to the Disaster Management Agency in northern province of Nueva Ecija, Rain brought about by Manyi triggered a landslide, killing 7 people and injuring 3 others. In the eastern province of Camarines Norte, an elderly man was killed after his motorbike was caught in a power line during the storm. The National Weather Service, Pagasa, had warned of a potentially catastrophic consequence from Manyi, but the early evacuation and less than expected volume of rain softened its effect. Packing maximum sustained wind speeds of up to 185 km per hour at its peak, Manyi uprooted trees, brought down power lines, crushed wooden houses, and triggered tidal surge, landslides, and flooding in Catanduanes and Aurora. In the northern province of Isabela, flooding submerged part of the city of Ilagan. Still ahead, India imposes $25.4 million fine on Meta. New Delhi State Chief Atishi Marlena said northern India was being pushed to a medical emergency after pollution readings in the capital city and other suburban areas hit their highest levels of the season. Visibility dropped to 100 meters in the capital, with Swiss Guard IQ Air recording New Delhi's air quality at 1,081, falling under the hazardous category. Atishi said farm fires in the neighboring states of Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh were responsible for northern India's plummeting air quality and asked the federal government to take accountability. New Delhi residents have been complaining of symptoms including shortness of breath and muscular cramps induced by pollution-related illnesses. Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital, a government-run hospital in New Delhi, has set up a special clinic for pollution-related illnesses where doctors said patients were complaining of a number of health issues including coughs, irritation in the eyes, and sore throats. The winter blanket of smoke and fog descended in the neighboring cities of Noida and Agra of Uttar Pradesh state as well. India's famed monument Taj Mahal was also covered in a thick layer of haze from trapped cold air dust, emissions, and smoke. India has imposed a penalty of $25.4 million on Facebook, parent company Meta, for unfair business practices and told it not to share user data it collects via WhatsApp on other platforms within the group. The Competition Commission of India directed Meta to ensure that WhatsApp will not share user data with other companies or products within the U.S. technology group for advertising purposes for 5 years. The issue is related to WhatsApp's 2021 privacy policy, which was implemented on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. The commission said users of the messaging app were required to accept its updated terms in order to continue using those services, which constituted an abuse of Meta's dominant position. It said before the revised privacy policy in 2021, WhatsApp users were given the option to decide whether they wanted to share their data with Facebook. But WhatsApp made data sharing with Meta mandatory for all users under the new terms of service. Venezuela's Vice President and Oil Minister, Delcy Rodriguez, has revealed that 11 people have been arrested as part of an investigation into an explosion and fire at a major gas complex last week. The Muscar gas complex in the country's eastern Monagas region, operated by state oil company PDVSA, was temporarily shut down after a pipeline explosion caused a fire, injuring at least 5 workers and forcing tougher power rationing in some places. Rodriguez said several foreigners connected to the case have fled the country, adding that the PDVSA had suffered $157 million in impact, though it was unclear if the figure corresponded only to Muscar incident or to others as well. Muscar distributes gas for re-injection to oil fields and domestic supply. Rodriguez, who appeared with Hector Obregon, the head of PDVSA, the company's head of security, said at least 3 other attacks had taken place or were attempted against PDVSA facilities this month. The Venezuelan government, whose president, Nicolas Maduro, is expected to begin a third term next year, has said repeatedly that the sabotage and terrorism are behind incidents at oil and power facilities, including a nationwide August blackout. Moving indigenous Maori chants rang out across New Zealand's capital as thousands rallied against a Conservative proposal accused of stoking racial divisions. An estimated 15,000 demonstrators poured into Wellington from all corners of the country, shutting down busy streets on the final stages of their protest march towards Parliament. Protests have been swelling throughout New Zealand after a minor party in the Conservative coalition government drafted a bill to redefine the founding Treaty of White Tangi. Although the bill has almost no chance of passing, its mere introduction has stirred up an uncomfortable reckoning on race relations. Many critics see it as an attempt to abolish government programs for Maori citizens, who remain far more likely to live in poverty, die early, and languish in prison. Seen as the country's founding document, the Treaty of White Tangi was signed in 1840 to bring peace between 540 Maori chiefs and colonizing British forces. Its principles underpin efforts to foster partnership between Indigenous and non-Indigenous New Zealanders and protect the interests of the Maori community. Next up in sports, Abu Sama secures double victory at Carina Indoor Cup. National wheelchair tennis player Abu Sama Burhan ended his campaign at the Carina Indoor Cup 2024 in the Czech Republic with an impressive double triumph by clinching titles in both the singles and doubles categories. The 39-year-old athlete defeated Jacob Dominik Bukala from Poland in the singles final with a score of 6-1, 7-6, while in the doubles event, Abu Sama teamed up with Martin Lagner to secure victory over Poland pair Jakub Dominik and Kamil Fabisiak, winning 6-2, 6-4. This success follows another notable win last week, where Abu Sama and Andrew Penny defeated Ruben Harris and Donnan Ward from Great Britain 6-1, 6-3 in the doubles final at the Abingdon Futures Tournament in the United Kingdom. With 3 titles in just 2 weeks, Abu Sama is set to conclude his European tour at the Prague Indoor Cup 2024, taking place from today until 22nd November. For the record, before this, Abu Sama had won gold and silver at the 2017 ASEAN Para Games in Kuala Lumpur and clinched a silver medal at the 2022 Asian Para Games in Hangzhou. Moving on to football. Malaysia drew 1-1 against India in a Tier 1 international friendly match at the Gachibowli Stadium in Hyderabad, India last night. The results saw Malaysia successfully block India's mission to take revenge after losing 4-2 in the Pesta Bola Merdeka 2023 action in Kuala Lumpur. A mistake by Indian goalkeeper Gurpreet Singh Sadhu, who failed to clear Muhammad Azam Azmi Murad's long-range pass outside the box, saw neutralized striker Paulo Josue calmly unleash a powerful shot into the net in the 19th minute. The situation, however, did not last long when Manolo Marquez's India equalized after Rahul Beke managed to get past the Malaysian defense to head in Brandon Fernandez's corner kick in the 38th minute. Both teams maintained their intensity well into the second half to seek another goal to extend their advantage, and from one such attack, Daniel Ting came close from a tight angle, but his attempt was saved by Gurpreet Singh. Malaysia also had better opportunities throughout the second half, but failed to convert their chances. For the record, Harimau Malaya coach Paulo Marti Vicente made 7 changes in his first team compared to when they beat Laos 3-1 in another Tier 1 international friendly in Bangkok last Thursday, as the team prepare for the 2024 ASEAN Championship, which is scheduled to start next month. In Croatia, Josko Gardiol scored his first international goal in 2 years to secure or rescue a point for Croatia in their 1-1 Nations League A Group 1 draw with Portugal in a split as both teams advanced to March's quarterfinals. Portugal were already assured of top spot in the pool ahead of kickoff and left Cristiano Ronaldo out of their match day squad. The visitors led thanks to a superb finish from João Felix, who expertly controlled Vitina's perfect pass into his path and lashed the ball low past Dominic Livakovic in the home goal. Croatia came close to the equalizer when Guardiol cushioned a header towards Andres Kramaric, and the latter's shot crashed into the post and away to safety. Kristijan Djagic's cross to the back post was perfect for Guardiol to beat Portugal goalkeeper Jorge Sá from close range and level the score, his third international goal and first since the 2022 World Cup. Following the draw with Portugal, Croatia finished in second place with 8 points from their 6 games. Tottenham Hotspur's Rodrigo Betancourt has been banned for 7 matches after the Uruguayan made a racist remark about South Korean people when talking about the teammate Son Heung-min during a television appearance. Betancourt had denied the charge, but an independent regulatory commission found it to be proven and imposed these sanctions, which includes a fine of £100,000. The Football Association said in a statement the midfielder acted in an improper manner and used abusive or insulting words and brought the game into disrepute. In June, on Uruguayan television program Por la Camiseta, host Rafa Cotelo asked Betancourt for a Spurs player's shirt, to which he replied, "Sony," or one of Sony's cousins, as they all look more or less the same. The Football Association had first charged 27-year-old Betancourt in September. Son Heung-min said later that month that there was no bad feeling between the players. Betancourt apologized to Son in June after the short clip from the TV show was widely circulated online. Betancourt, who played in the Uruguayans' 3-2 win over Colombia in 2026 World Cup qualifier on Saturday, will still be available for Tottenham's Europa League matches, but will not return to domestic action until 26 December. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, UN Security Council veto power needs to reform to be more inclusive. Now tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Otto Othman from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching.